Welcome everyone. My name is Tre. I'm the Development Coordinator at the Melbourne Accelerator Program. I'm very pleased to welcome you all to the Masterclass today with Toby Potter. Toby is the Commercial Finance Manager from Southern Cross Austereo, where he manages commercial and financial issues. He's also a key advisor to senior executives on acquisitions, investments, and financial strategy. Prior to this, he worked across many different industries, including financial services, media, and communications. He also has extensive experience in mergers and acquisitions. Without further ado, would you please join me welcoming Toby?
Thanks very much. Just to start off, say thanks for everyone for coming down tonight and giving up some of your evening and allowing me the opportunity to come and speak with you. As was mentioned, I've worked across numerous sort of finance and commercial roles in a number of different industries. My current role is as the Finance and Commercial Manager for Southern Cross Austereo. And as part of that role, I'm responsible for a number of commercial financial aspects across the group, including mergers and acquisitions and investments in startup businesses, which is something that we're looking to do more of. Quite often when I sort of look at startup businesses and look at the pitch decks that end up on my desk, they all face similar financial challenges. And so what I'd like to do tonight is share with you some of the things that I've learned and hopefully give you guys some tips on managing finances for your own startup businesses. So managing finances for startups. The finances of any business are based upon thousands of different transactions, and all of those impact either a profit loss, a balance sheet, or a cash flow in some way. Financial management of a business is about actively managing all of these transactions and understanding the impact that they each have on various financial statements. I won't bore you with too much theory, but obviously your P&L is about managing day-to-day operations of your business to make sure that you're profitable. Managing a balance sheet is about managing the financial stability of a business to ensure that you can pay upcoming debts as and when they fall due. And managing cash flow is about managing receipts and payments to make sure you've got enough cash in the bank to cover the cash outflows of your business. I think startups are relatively unique in that often they're not profitable from day one. Profitability of a business for startups is less of a concern in the early days, as profitability often comes with scale and the development of products that take time. So for startups, it's important that you need to make sure that your end product is viable in some way and profitability will be achievable one day. But in the early days, it's not really somewhere you want to focus in terms of managing the financial aspects of your business. And in terms of the balance sheet, in terms of assets and liabilities, you're probably not going to have any. So your main asset is likely to be cash, and that is absolutely the thing that you have to pay the most attention to. It's particularly important for startups to understand the cash profile of the business inside out, and make sure you've got a solid model on which to predict future cash flows. Running out of cash is the number one reason that most businesses fail. And for this reason, I'm going to focus my presentation mainly on managing cash flow and cash in startup businesses. It's amazing the number of businesses that end up asking for funding from us because they are literally just about to run out of cash, and that's never a situation you want to be in, and it's never a situation that demands the highest value for your business. So I think startups are relatively unique in, all businesses seek to create a large amount of value, but I think startups are relatively unique in that they seek to do it with a very minimal amount of financial resources. You consider a startup business that might have to fund a development path for 6, 12, 24 months, compared to a business that might be something like a coffee shop that, from 4 weeks or from fit out, they've opened up and there's cash coming in the door. So the maximum value that startups develop usually comes through the development of products or services that disrupt large industries. And the development of those products and services takes a considerable amount of time, and you need to make sure that there's enough cash in the business to actually get through that process. This is something that I kind of call what is a value creation process. So You'll see I'm an accountant and not a graphic designer, so I apologise for the quality of some of the slides. But the value creation process, every startup should have a strategy and have determined how it plans to be successful in creating value for shareholders. The value is likely to be created by new products or services that it believes will gain traction in the market. And the startup should have a product development roadmap and have identified what the key milestones on that roadmap are. And those key milestones are events at which you've actually got something tangible. The last thing you want to do is run out of money before you fall short of achieving a key milestone. So they're things like product launches, enhancements being rolled out, all that sort of stuff. And obviously the maximum amount of value is achieved when a number of key milestones are met and the product or service becomes cash flow positive. So each of these milestones is a point where incremental value gets created in the business. So if you consider a business that is, developing a product, if you're halfway through the development cycle and you run out of cash, you actually haven't got a lot. You've got less than if you'd actually launched that product itself. So it's just critical to understand what that value creation process is for your own business and at what points you're actually creating value. This brings me to the cash runway. So a cash runway is pretty simply calculated as being the amount of cash divided by your monthly burn rate will tell you how long you've got. So your burn rate is how much you're spending on a particular monthly basis. The cash runway has to be long enough to enable you to reach key milestones, at which point the business has tangible results and values being created. If a startup, as I said before, if a startup sets out to create a new product but runs out of cash before the product is even finished being designed, then very little value has been created. And it's obviously very hard to get investment at that point because investors, they look for tangible results and achievements. Once tangible results have been achieved, there's some value that's been created in the business. The startups has proven that they can execute, and investors are willing to invest in businesses that can execute and get things done. And obviously any investment that happens at that point extends the cash runway and enables sort of the next key milestones to be achieved. Accurately determining a cash runway and burn rates, you'll need to prepare a cash flow report. It's quite simply a list of cash receipts and cash payments, categorised by activity, and you'll want to do this by month at least. You can't understand the burn rate or the cash flow or the cash runway without a cash flow report. This is 100% about cash flow. My advice would be create a cash flow report that you can easily update and update quickly. Billion-dollar organisations track cash daily to understand the cash profile of their business. You need to constantly compare the cash runway with the value creation roadmap to make sure that you're on a path to achieving the next key milestone and you've got enough funding to do that. You don't want to run out of money before you get there. You want to be conservative because things always come up and you need the ability to deal with unexpected events. And when you actually develop a cash flow forecast, you want to plot your actuals against it and deal with any variances early as quickly as possible. But one of the things that I often ask businesses for is, what was the cash flow forecast you started with 6 months ago and how did you track to that? And if that's accurate, then I get a much better sense as to the forecast that's been put in front of me. If the previous forecast has diverged wildly from the actual cash flows of the business, then I look at the future forecasted cash flows and think, I'm not 100% confident on what those numbers are telling me. So the cash runway and the value creation process, they need to live together as two documents. In this scenario here, the business would have a cash runway of 3 months if they had $150,000 in the bank. And if you consider where they're going to be at the end of month 2, they're likely to have just launched a product and they're going to need to be raising capital at that point because they're about to run out of money. Given that fundraising takes time, it's likely that the discussions with potential investors will need to be occurring before the product is launched. And again, you get a much better valuation if you've actually launched a product and achieved something and created that value and in achieving that milestone than if you haven't yet done it. Planning your cash runway in conjunction with your value creation roadmap will enable you to understand the times when the business is low on cash and at what stage you will be when this happens. If you're running low on funds and the value of a business may be improved by achieving the next milestone, then you may make the decision to allocate cash differently or try to obtain some short-term funding. So allocating funds and sort of measuring return on investment. The one thing about this is traditional methods that businesses use for measuring ROI, they don't apply to startup businesses. But like any business, your cash is not unlimited and funds need to be allocated somehow. So what do you do? Traditional businesses will prepare, forecasted cash flow relating to an investment. They'll discount the cash flows and they'll come up with an NPV number. And if that NPV number is acceptable, the project will go ahead. Well, that's very hard for a startup to do when there's little data around what historical cash flows have been, and it's very hard to pick a discount rate that would actually be meaningful. So traditional methods for measuring return on investment and allocating funds don't work for startups, in my opinion. Startups need to allocate funding based on the impact that the funding has on achieving milestones within their value creation roadmap. For example, if a tech development team is likely to fall short of a launch date and a funding round is required shortly after that launch date, then a decision to allocate funds to an additional developer to make sure that the product launch is achieved will have a big impact on achieving that key milestone. No ROI calculation is going to tell you that that's where you should have put the money. So it's more intuitive than anything else, and understanding what you're trying to achieve and the products you're trying to create and the milestones you're trying to get to, and allocating funds to the tasks that are on that critical path to achieving that. When making decisions about where to allocate funding, it's a really good idea to consider opportunity cost and consider, if you want to employ an accountant but you've got the founder doing the books at the moment, is that the best use of their time? Should you spend the money, get an accountant and get the founder to focus on achieving the milestones in that value creation process? So I encourage you to consider opportunity cost and where your time might be better spent, and whether or not it's better to invest in outsourcing some tasks as well. So I've touched on cash flow and fundraising. So the biggest risk to startup businesses is running out of funds. And knowing how to navigate the funding process will help to mitigate this risk. So the sort of advice I have on this topic is keep the pitch deck that you have short. Explain clearly what the future plans are for the business and ensure this reconciles with the amount of money being asked for. So often I see pitch decks that ask for $500,000 when the amount of money that's really needed is $1 million or $2 million. And quite often large businesses want to invest more if they believe in the product. I just had an incident recently where someone asked for $1 million and we went back and said, what if we gave you $3 million? What does that look like? So understanding where the funding takes you on that journey of creating value and where it gets you, and ask for the amount of money you need to reach the next key milestone, because otherwise it's likely that you'll waste the first portion, or the investors are going to say, I give you $500,000, that takes you to point X, what do we do then? You don't have a product, it's not developed yet. So ask for the amount of money you need. Highlight previous successes to prove that you're capable and trustworthy of achieving something. This doesn't need to be previous startups or anything that have been launched. It's about saying 6 months ago we planned to launch a product and we achieved it. And that actually gives investors a level of confidence that you can do what you say you can do. Affiliate and partner with industry players where possible. So investors will be more confident if other industry participants have invested or partnered with you. It gives you credibility. The other way is fundraising. It just takes time. Always allow for longer than you think, and plan a contingency in your cash flow to allow for that delay, particularly when you're dealing with large corporates. They just, trust me, I work for one, they just take a long time to get things done, regardless of the amount of money in some instances. The other thing I would encourage is maintain a list of potential investors and keep in contact with these people regularly. Don't just call them when you need money, because they know that's what will happen. But keep them updated with the product, keep them updated with where you're at. So when you are approaching them for funding, they understand where your business is at. They've been kept up to date with what's going on. And the other key thing is don't make any major changes in the middle of a funding round. It really, changes of strategy and those sort of things whilst you're trying to raise money are never good. It really reduces your chances of being successful. And if you're unsuccessful in raising funding, then you obviously have challenges in meeting the milestones that you've set out to achieve on that timeline. The other one would be is just don't shy away from mistakes that you might have made in the past. I see a lot of pitch decks where you look at things and things don't quite make sense, and it'll be because something's gone wrong. And people don't like owning up to a mistake that they might have made. Best thing is to acknowledge it, acknowledge what you learned from it, and then move on. So I've spent a bit of time talking about cash flow, because cash flow is, as I said earlier, is the number one reason that businesses fail. They run out of money. I guess the other thing I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about is just the kind of basics of financial management. So invest in setting up a finance system. There's lots of them out there, cloud-based systems like Xero that are really good and not overly expensive. Find a good accountant. There's lots of bad accountants. Find a good one that can actually help you, and that you can give them tasks that are better suited to their needs and free up your time to do other things that are more integral to the business. Set up a monthly reporting pack. So large businesses obviously have board reports and things like that they have to do on a monthly basis. Doesn't need to be song and verse, but some kind of monthly reporting pack that tells people how you're going, what the cash flow looks like, where you're at in your product development cycle, and be disciplined about making sure it gets produced every month and put some time aside to review it. One of the frustrations I have is investments we make and then you never hear from people, or updates are infrequent, or often when things are bad and they need something. So just keeping people up to date and setting up a monthly reporting pack. And just ensure you undertake a regular financial planning process. So looking at where your cash flow is, where you expected it to be, where does it sit with the roadmap and the journey that you're on, and are you likely to fall short of achieving a particular key milestone, and what does that mean? What does that mean for the valuation of the business, and what does that mean for the next funding round? Be conservative. Always allow for things will always cost more. People will pay you later than you always expect. So always have a plan C. Where necessary, have a plan in the bottom drawer that you can act on if you need to. Get professional advice when structuring your business. Obviously, in sort of the early days, proprietary limited business structures are relevant and make a lot of sense. But as things get more complicated, there are other jurisdictions that come into play, more beneficial jurisdictions for startups. And get professional advice when trying to set that sort of stuff up. It's complicated, and you want to get it right. And understand why you're doing it, particularly, in my experience, if lawyers love to complicate things, and if you give them an opportunity, they'll likely do so. So get people to explain why the structure that's being set up for your business is the one they recommend. And if you don't understand it, get a second opinion, because the chances are it's been overcomplicated, and complicated structures turn investors away. They don't understand why it was done, and it often just makes things too difficult. So the other piece of advice would just be protect your assets. So that's anything you create in terms of patents, trademarks, insurance policies. Make sure you protect what it is in your business that is valuable, and make sure that you get good advice when doing that. And then find a financial mentor, and I don't mean an accountant, I mean someone who can look at your business objectively and tell you things that you may not like to hear, but you might need to hear, and can review those reports with you on a frequent basis and help you to try and understand the cash flow implications on the product roadmap that you're on, and how you might be able to overcome what some of those challenges are. And the right person, it can be invaluable in that process as well. Sure.
Can we ask questions?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to take questions as we go along.
The second point that you mentioned, to get a good accountant.
Yeah.
Right? What would you look for a good accountant? What would be the criteria to say, at least I want the minimum criteria should be these?
Someone who can help you solve problems. Particularly for startups, there's a lot of government incentives and R&D claims and that sort of stuff. So someone who can help you solve a problem. An accountant that tells you what the problem is, if it doesn't help you solve it, is in my opinion, is not worth a lot of value. So if they provide you a cash flow report that says you're going to run out of money, okay, thanks. You probably could have worked that out yourself. How are we going to solve the problem? Oh, there's an incentive you can get access to. There's an R&D claim that we can get a loan against. Accountants often have wealthy friends. They might have an investor who's willing to come in. Someone about helping you solve a problem, and helping you understand the numbers. Just giving you a piece of paper with numbers on it doesn't necessarily mean anything, in my opinion. So I guess, in summary, the business, you need to have a clear path to being profitable over the medium to longer term. But it's not likely that you're going to be profitable from day one, because you're going to be developing products that will hopefully significantly enhance the value of the company into the future. You need to understand the cash flow of your business and regularly review cash flow forecasts. The detrimental impact from running out of money is you end up in a place you don't want to be. And that's usually some sort of fire sale scenario, or taking an investment at a valuation significantly lower than what you needed to, simply because you didn't manage cash flow properly. Doesn't mean the value of your business is any different. It means there's someone out there who's opportunistic that knows that you're desperate, and so they'll value your business accordingly. Align your cash flow, your cash runway, with the value creation process to make sure you don't fall short of achieving key milestones. And if you are going to be just short, you need to find a way to achieve that milestone to help improve the value of your business and prove to investors that you can actually execute. Funds should be allocated to tasks that are critical to the value creation process. And traditional ROI calculations for startups just are not relevant. Allocate funding to tasks that enable you to achieve those key milestones that create value. And fundraising never stops, so manage a list of potential investors, people you meet, keep them updated on the product, because if you do get into that sticky situation where you need some short-term funding to achieve the next key milestone before you raise a larger amount of money, you're more likely to get it if you've spoken to these people before. And if they understand your business and they're interested and you've kept them up to date with what's going on. If you met them 6 months ago and you haven't spoken to them since and you just ring up, ask for money, they'll know exactly why you're calling. And that does happen. I get that more frequently than you'd think. And just being disciplined about the basics from day one. Finance for a lot of people is not exciting. It's not the reason you went into business. The reason you went in is probably to make money, which is the exciting part. But managing finances for people who are interested in product development is not necessarily something that's all that exciting. So be disciplined about the basics from day one, and you'll actually get reward for getting the basics right and being able to produce standard financial information when investors ask for it. And there's no point getting the 11th hour where you need short-term funding and the investor says, sure, send me through your last 6 months worth of financial statements. I want to understand your cash flow. You don't have them. It doesn't look good, and it doesn't give them any level of confidence that you're really across the financial management of the business. and that person's just about to give you some money, so they want to know that you can actually manage it properly. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your time.